And we're live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Live Reality Games at Night. I am your host, Parker Barnett, and joining me, as always, is Nathan, my co-host. Nathan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. The school semester is over. The teachers aren't giving me night terrors anymore. The whole works. It's always very nice.
That is always good to hear. We apologize, everybody, that this is taking quite a while. Just various different scheduling issues has led to us not being able to podcast, but we are here to talk about the finale of Survivor Angelica 2021. And just as we like to start off, let's just give our general thoughts about the episode itself. Nathan, what did you think about this finale episode?
It didn't play out how we thought it would.
No, no.
It was kind of interesting because if you just told me the outcome of the episode, I wouldn't have been surprised at all. Like we thought Taylor was going to win.
Yeah.
Very early in the season.
Right.
But the way in which it went down was not predictable.
No, I fully agree. Like the path, the end results might have been a little predictable, very well deserved, good ending, but might have been a little more predictable. But just the steps it took to get to that point certainly was not. Considering the fact that going into this episode, it was everybody against Brett, and Brett. But we will get into that. So we open up, no time to waste. We go into our final 5 individual immunity challenge, and it's the classic game. I've heard different titles of this. I've heard Snake, so that's just what I'm going to refer to it as. Basically,
I actually looked it up on the Survivor Wiki.
What's it called?
Labeled as Squared Off. I never knew what to call this stinking challenge.
See, okay, because I've heard it as like a game of Snake before, so that's what I've always known it, but I didn't know it was called Squared Off. That's interesting.
Your title makes more sense than Squared Off.
Hey, Survivor can't help it not make a pun,
exactly.
in their title, in their challenge title. So speaking of the challenge, each person stands at a randomly drawn spot to start off. There's a set of tiles on the ground. Each time it's the player's turn, they have to step onto a tile and flip it over. That tile is now no longer in the game. They keep going until they no longer have any space or moves to make. Last person standing wins. And first of all, I actually really do like this challenge. I think it's really good, not only for like a fan-made live game because it doesn't require a lot of setup, but I also just think it's kind of like a Survivor classic. They've never done it on Survivor, but I kind of also really like the Big Brother version of this, the one where knights moves, you know the one I'm talking about, where you have to move in the shape of a knight. I actually really like that as well. But Nathan, I just want to ask you, on paper, Brett should not have won this challenge.
No, I was gonna joke, like, Brett really coming in clutch here. They're all worried about his physical prowess, and he dominates in the game of Snake. I honestly don't even know like what I would describe like the skill set to do well in this game. Like, I guess in theory it's like strategy, but
yeah,
I mean, it's not really high-end strategy. It's a lot more just see how it plays out.
Would you describe this as like a mental comp, maybe?
I mean, it's definitely more mental than anything else. I mean, there's nothing else to it than mental.
Well, I thought... Go ahead.
So, I actually have experience with this challenge. Not from actually playing it in real life, but in the crappy Survivor video game. This was one of the few challenges that actually functioned in that video game. So I was looking forward to this challenge while playing that because the controls actually worked. Because it's hard to mess up flipping over a tile.
Dude, now you think about it, has there ever been a good Survivor video game? Because I don't know if there's one past that Wii game from around like 2007, 2008, and that was terrible.
I have never... Yeah, that is the worst controlled game I've ever played. Like, and half the challenges are literally just like throw something, and the controller does not recognize that you're throwing it.
No. I remember there was one like a slingshot, and like you would release it and it would delay for at least 3 seconds. So then it wouldn't count that you actually released the slingshot. I'm like, great.
My
Yeah, I've
favorite
never played
challenge
a
in that
Survivor
game,
video
my
game.
absolute favorite is, it wasn't even like they were trying to make this look like a real challenge. It was literally just move your remotes up and down and then jump. And whoever jumps the furthest wins the
Yes.
challenge.
As if I don't even know how they determined how to recognize how, like, who jumped farther. Like, what made each jump farther or shorter than the last? I don't even know how you like program that. It wasn't a challenge at all. I mean, to be fair, that would be a great challenge on Australian Survivor. I could see them doing that as like a reward challenge. Can't you jump across this canyon as fast as you can? Or like as far as
Not
you
enough
can.
injuries there. Like, you have to jump while also like beating up someone else. That would be the Australian challenge.
So
So
one
the
thing that
squared off.
yeah.
I found it interesting, actually. You said they were given random points in the board. That actually wasn't true, because
Oh,
some of them went to the very edges of the board, but Amy like got near the center of the board. She started in the center, so I think they could start wherever they wanted, basically.
okay. I just recalled them drawing for spots, or they did something before this challenge started, and I'm misremembering it. I think I thought they were drawing for spots, so
Yeah,
that
I
was
just
my
found it
mistake.
unconventional that they could just choose anywhere. And it was strange to me that Amy chose to go in the middle of the board, because that seems like not a great position to start off in.
Well, and I don't think he really talked about, but I actually, if I and I don't know how much this was intentional. I'm going to assume it was very intentional. I actually kind of noticed Brett. I think Brett had a pretty concise strategy. I noticed because he started in one of the corners, right? And all of his
Yeah.
moves were to the left. Then he went straight for a while. Then to the right, making a he basically marked off to where the other players couldn't get inside, and he left himself with his own like bit of tiles to walk on, whereas the other 4 people were essentially walking over each other, trying to take each other's tiles, whereas Brett had his own property, which I thought was a very good strategy.
So Taylor actually is weighing in. She says, she
Yes.
reveals that Amy got in the middle because she wanted to cut off Chad.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
Since Chad is this unbeatable behemoth, as we are told several times.
Yes, thank you, Ted. I don't know what they were doing before. I think I might have been mistaking it for another challenge. I could have sworn they're drawing response. I apologize for that.
So using his cleats and raw muscle, Brett wins the snake challenge.
Yes, Brett wins the snake challenge, and I'm glad Taylor piped in on that and gave us insight, because you would think they would want to target Brett, and I'm not saying no one did, but it's interesting that Amy was trying to go after Chad as well. It seems that at this point in time, from what we're seeing and told in the confessionals, that Chad and Brett are like seen as the 2 biggest threats left in the game.
I'm telling you, I think just Chad is better set up for these in-game challenges than Brett is.
Yeah. You
like,
think so?
In general, like as it worked out, Brett did really well in these in-game challenges. But
yeah,
as a general rule, I think, because most in-game challenges are stand in one place, and
yeah,
I mean, we saw later on that Chad's doing his exit interview, and he's basically able to like contort his whole body into like a leather. So
yeah, we get some strategy here, and we hear from Brett, who now that he has immunity, he has a little bit of power in theory. You know, as these numbers dwindle, being the one person not available to go home does give him a little more power and say. And he talks about how he's convinced no matter who is in the final 4 with him, he has to win immunity. He doesn't think there's anything he can do. So with that logic in mind, he wants to target Chad, which, given what we're told from the other players about how they think Chad is a threat to win anyway, it makes a lot of sense if you're Brett, if you want to take out the biggest challenge competitors, don't you think?
Yeah.
And and we get a confessional from Billy, which I thought was interesting because up to this last podcast we talked about how tight is the Billy Chad pair, because we didn't get a lot of insight into, are they ride or dies at this point, or are they only working together until they can cut the other, that type of stuff. And Billy basically confirms that his ideal final three was him, Taylor, and Steve. But obviously, Steve going home and Taylor not voting with him obviously changed that. But he talks about how he didn't plan to go to the end with Chad. He was just going to work with him as long as he could until he had to vote him off. And he thinks this is the time to do it. So I thought that was interesting that I get the sense that Billy, even though he was really loyal to Sarah, I think we got more insight into how Billy is the type of player. It's like, I'm looking out for myself first over loyalty. So I thought that was an interesting insight from Billy.
I would be interested to know just how many people had Taylor in their in-game plans.
Yeah.
Because we already know for a fact that Billy and Chad and Amy, obviously, they all had Taylor in their in-game plans.
Right.
I assume Brett and Chelsea also had her in their in-game plans, right?
I would think at least Brett and probably Chelsea. And yeah, I don't know if Steve really wanted to go the end with Taylor, but if he wanted that final three with Billy, then maybe so.
And even some of the people who got out like earlier in the merge, like Kurt probably wanted to take her really far in the game. Like Taylor was really set up well to make the end game, no matter how this shook out here.
The only person I could think of who was even like Taylor's a threat was like Alyssa, and you saw what happened there.
Yeah.
It's like all these people, basically almost everyone in the merge wanted Taylor in their end game, which is very impressive how set up she was, like you said. Let's see. I had one more point before Tribal, but I was going to ask, was there any other
Brett
standout
thinks
moment?
Brett thinks he needs to win out. That's an important note.
Yes.
Yeah, he says he thinks his only route to the end is just winning all the challenges.
Well, he may not have to, because the point I was getting to is Brett very casually finds an idol. And when I say casually, it's just the way the show presented it was kind of funny, where it's, hey, Brett, what do you got there? Found an idol. And obviously it was harder than that. It was just the way that show presented it was kind of unintentionally funny. So Brett has an idol and immunity at the final five.
Brett and Chelsea both found idols incredibly casually this season.
Yeah. They just find it it's like almost like a stick right on the path to Tribal or the challenges. It's crazy. Brett does say that he found it on the roof of the cabin, so that explains where this one was hidden. But Brett has a decision to make going into this Tribal. Does he save this idol for himself at 4? Because I believe he said it was good through 4, which
was.
I think he said that. Yeah,
man, that's crazy that he used it in that case.
That's what I'm saying. Unless I'm misunderstanding, I wrote down what he said. He said it's good through 4, so that makes me think he could play it at 4.
Yeah, that's a powerful idol there.
That's what to say. Most idols, even on the real show, expire at 5. So when I heard that, I was like, oh man, that's crazy. I thought for sure he would keep it, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But we ultimately get to Tribal, and Chad and Billy see the writings on the wall. It's one of them. Chad even says in a confessional beforehand, he's like 85% sure it's him. He tried to make a pitch to Billy and Brett that we need to break up the last real pair in the game, which honestly isn't a bad strategy at all. The problem is that, as we are told many times, they're all convinced they can't beat Chad anyway. So it's like I don't think there's really much Chad could have done here. What do you think?
I mean, no.
Yeah.
He would need information that he doesn't have, like with the idol or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, is there a pitch to go to Brett and say hey, you, me, final 2, buddy? That is there a route there? I don't even think that is a route.
You would think maybe that if you're Chet, right? you would just lie and appeal to Brett saying like, hey, you don't think you can survive the next vote if you don't have immunity. I'm probably the only person who will get voted out over you. So it's like, keep me around. I will be your shield for these next few votes, which I understand. I think that's probably his only pitch to Brett that would be appealing to Brett. The only thing is when you're in the end game, you have to cut shields. If you have I feel like more often than not, we see if you bring your shield to the end with you, that's a strategy that the jury doesn't really reward.
He's in a bad spot because he is the number one challenge threat in these people's eyes. Because
Right.
if they were all under the impression that Brett is the challenge beast who we need to get rid of, then maybe Chad gets it like, oh, bring me along. I could beat Brett in the challenges. But that's not even the case here.
Right. I was about to say the only other pitch to the other people is like kind of like he's the Aris, to Brett's Terry Dietz kind of thing. It's like, keep me because I'm the only one who might be able to beat Brett. But the problem is they all have the perception that Chad is not only this great challenge competitor, but he's also very just likable and strategic, and the jury likes him. He did make a pitch at Tribal about how, him, Taylor, and Brett against all odds, they were the original Malik, and literally they came into the merge 6-4. Kirk got voted out, and then somehow all three of them are still here all these rounds later. He tried to play the loyalty route, which isn't bad if you try and tug on some heartstrings. We especially saw Taylor did not want to vote Chad, like from an emotional standpoint. It was the right move, and she did it, but if Chad, I guess Chad could have really like worked the emotional angle, because I remember Brett goes up to vote and he even says, and we can only take Brett's word for it, he would have gone with the loyalty thing. It's just he's just convinced he cannot stay next round if he does not have immunity, and he thinks Chad is more likely to beat him. So even the loyalty card doesn't work, unfortunately, for Chad.
This was my favorite through line through the whole finale. Is I was half expecting like a season-long twist to be that Chad and Taylor are long lost like siblings in some way, because the way they talk, like especially Chad talks in confessional, he gets like the same confessional several times where he's like, Taylor, she's just so great. Like, I'd never vote against her no matter what, unless it was for her to win. And then they're like undyingly loyal to each other. It feels like their like relationship and alliance here is stronger than literal family members on this season.
That would have been a good twist. It would have been classic this season of dropping these bombs on the audience when we least expect it. Why not? I was hoping they'd save one for the finale.
At a certain point, though, it'd be like that horrible, like, Amazing Race, like, family season where it's like 4 people in a group together.
Stop that. There was some ironic enjoyment in that season. It was a terrible season from a quality standpoint, but there was a lot of ironic entertainment.
If we want to go full Amazing Race Family Edition, we need like an 8-year-old on Survivor Angelica next year.
Let's see. So the votes are cast, and Brett decides he is going to play his idol on Billy, in fact. Yes. Now, just obviously we know Brett doesn't know he's going to win immunity at the next challenge. But what do you think are the advantages here to playing the idol on Billy if you're Brett?
So did he need to play it on Billy?
So I don't think he had. That's the thing. I might have confused the wording. He may have had to play it this round, so it wasn't good, but I could have sworn he said through Final Four in his confessional.
My question is, like, would Billy have gone here if he didn't play the idol on him?
Not simply based on the votes, obviously, but perhaps there could have been a Brett obviously could have told Amy and Taylor, who he did say he had like an alliance with at this point, that he was going to play it on Billy to ensure Chad goes home. That could have been a possibility. I think the advantage here, if you're Brett, is you're trying to, if you do not win immunity, is like, if like, because again, Brett is voting with Amy and Taylor, so they're going to be there either way, and he wants Chad gone. But if he plays the idol on Billy, perhaps he's hoping Billy will vote with him at the next vote. You know what I'm saying? If Brett doesn't have immunity, like cause a 2 to like, if Brett doesn't win, he's probably thinking his only real hope is to rely on Billy to cause a tie at that point, and he can point to Billy. I kept you in the game when your head was on the chopping block. You were a target. So I think he might have just been trying to win favor with Billy for the next round.
Well, to me, the measurement you have to make is it better to get to the final 3 with Chad than be potentially vulnerable at final 4? Because I think that's what he has to be accounting for here, is he doesn't want the scenario, if this does work at final 4, where he loses immunity, Chad wins immunity, and they both are guaranteed final 3.
Right.
Which, if you're at that point in the game where that's a measurement you have to make, I mean, you're not in a horrible spot. I mean, you're guaranteed final 3, but
either way it could work. And again, the Billy loyalty or trying to appeal to Billy by playing the out on him might not have even been his main goal. He might have at that point decided he wanted Chad gone, and he played it on Billy just to guarantee Chad went home, because Billy was the only other real option. But that might have been the case. He just wanted to guarantee Chad went home. But like you said, could there have been a situation where Chad and Brett join forces and are like, look, we're the biggest threats in the game. At least we're perceived that way. We should be aligned, and we should go to final 3 together and battle it out. That's, like you said, that could have been a prospect, but I don't know if Chad even wanted to do that, and I don't know if Brett wanted to do that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's these type of things that think about. Again, that's what made this finale so interesting, is that you come in expecting, okay, Brett loses final 5 immunity, he's gone, and then it's the 2 pairs, quote unquote. But no, we get this round and next round, we get Brett going on a little bit of a run and trying to set up his end game against all odds as best as he can. So that's what made it interesting, that he did have options in these final 5 and 4 rounds. But like you said, Brett plays the idol on Billy, negates Chad's vote against Billy. All the rest are for Chad. Chad goes home, and Chad was great this season.
How do you mean?
Oh, I'm just saying I thought he was fun TV. I really liked how hard he played the game. Everybody on that original Malik especially, but Chad was one of the people, like Brent Taylor, who went to a lot of tribal councils, didn't really have a lot of luck in the early game, and was able to squeak by, at least to this point in the game, and have a legitimate shot at winning. So I really thought Chad was great this season.
Yeah, I thought he was really good too. I would say he's probably not the most like bombastic necessarily in terms of like move making or anything, but you don't need everyone to be like that. And he clearly was in a good spot to win. And let's be honest, these Malik people have no business making it all to the final 5 like this.
They were all good in their own way.
Exactly.
Right. And Chad, I get the vibe just from how the other players talk about him, and even we see in brief bits of him interacting in group conversations. Chad's one of those people who's just really good in one-on-one or group conversations, and that may not always translate to being a big TV personality, but it's somebody who everyone really likes to be around, and you need those type of people.
Brett definitely went out on a high note when he ends his confessional by falling to the ground and like contorting his whole body.
I forgot about that.
That was incredibly impressive. I mean, that would be an effective like final tribal council speech if you just get up there like, "Hey guys, look at this."
Not even picture case, just be like.
I mean, that's a powerful point you just made.
That's a good point. I can't argue with anything you said.
No,
because you didn't say anything. Like, that's a powerful point. So we're gonna get to the final 4 immunity now, and this is a bit of a creative one. It's Jason calls it a tree maze, and basically they have a bunch of different ropes in the various different trees that are close by, and each player had to take a carabiner and run through the maze and try to find the end path. Each person went one at a time, and they were timed. Fastest time, the person who completed the maze in the fastest time would win immunity. Nathan, how do you think you would do at this challenge?
I have no idea. Like, kind of similar to the last one, I don't really know what the skill set is here.
Right.
Except for Brett. Just be Brett, and you'll beast this.
Wear cleats.
They're going very old school with these two challenges here. We have that first immunity
Both of these
challenge.
were in Borneo.
Yeah,
which
sure. That's from Borneo, and this is very Australian outback, like with Colby using those carabiners. So,
you're right. They did this in Australia. I thought they did in Borneo. You're right, Australia.
Wait, they might have done it in Borneo too?
Like a variation, but I know for a fact they did it in Australia. You're right.
So if we're going based on the trend, the final immunity will be them drinking cow's blood. We can only hope.
From Africa, yeah. I'm waiting for the kite challenge for Marquesas to appear as the final immunity.
This is like the quintessential challenge that Parker would win. Like, just like a random like skill thing. Like, oh, Parker beasts this one challenge. I could just see it.
It would be me to be the person who won the challenge that isn't really accuracy, dexterity, strategic, physical, anything. It's just kind of a miscellaneous type of challenge. This would be what I would win, honestly.
If I had to describe it, I'd go like spatial reasoning, maybe. Because it's not really a puzzle. It's more like seeing the whole picture.
Yeah. It's spatial reasoning, and it's also like, I know this isn't a type of challenge, but like especially because they're timed, making a quick split second judgment call type of thing. Yeah. You don't really have time to look at the field as it is. You just have to really trust your instincts. And some people pause and think about this type of stuff for a few seconds, and other people just go for it. That's the type of thing. I feel like you'd be good at this. I feel like you're really good at snap, really fast, making quick judgment calls. So I think you do good at this.
I find it fascinating. This is a challenge that has like almost no physical component to it at all, as we've discussed. But we saw Colby win this challenge, and now we're seeing Brett win this challenge. So this is like if you're a strong bro, this is where you're gonna really show your strides.
I guess if nothing else, speed helps.
Yeah.
Like if you make a mistake, you're more like, let's say everybody made a mistake, and I guess the quickest person in theory would be able to correct that mistake the quickest by just correcting it and running to the correct tree. I guess speed might be a factor as well that we're not thinking about.
Oh, speaking of, you mentioned him earlier, I think Aris and Terry, this is the 2 Battering Rams challenge.
Yeah, this is the Wambulance.
Yeah.
This is a good one. Yeah, and Terry was, he said Aris cheated.
Yeah.
I didn't get the times for this one, but like you said.
Oh, I got the time for Brett.
Oh. Okay, what did Brett do?
He got 49 seconds, which is ridiculous.
That's very impressive. Because it wasn't like a huge course necessarily, but it wasn't like 5 trees either. It was a decently sized course, I would say.
This is one of the challenge where you just get the sense that production was really excited to do it. Like, you could just tell that they saw that grouping of trees. They're like, ooh, we got to do something with that. That looks good. Or they already had this planned, and they're just like, I guess we'll hope we get lucky and find a good grouping of trees. And then they find this grouping that looks straight out like if you designed it in like a 3D engine. It just looks perfect for this setup.
You could tell they probably had a lot of fun, like not only like twisting the ropes and putting them at the correct trees, but also probably testing it themselves beforehand. You can tell this is probably a fun one for production. But Brett, against all odds, Nathan, it was winner go home last round for Brett, winner go home this round. Brett has won immunity at the Final Four.
Yay.
And even more than last time, I would say he has even more power at this vote, given that Final Four is and I know it's not a Final Three, but like just even on the real show, we do typically see whoever wins immunity at the Final Four, at least before the fire-making twist, that person did have a lot of power.
Brett has a weird confessional after he wins immunity here.
What does he say?
Well, I don't know if weird is the right word, I guess. It was just confusing to me. He said that he hopes the jury will respect his game and that he had to win out, even though he's making such aggressive and mean moves. Which, I mean, I get that he idled out Chad in the last round, but I wouldn't really call that mean. I mean,
yeah,
it makes total sense. It's not like he's just doing it to be like a douche.
Right.
It's not like
he's not. Yeah, he doesn't go into
Chad
specifics.
for no reason.
He doesn't go into specifics. I guess if nothing else, he was very vocal at like several tribals. Like I remember the tribal Kurt got voted off. He was arguing with people. I remember even like the both. I'm pretty sure he was arguing with people at the Sarah tribal even, and maybe the Chelsea one. I know for a fact he was at least arguing at the one where Kurt got voted out. So maybe he's thinking like people don't like the argumentative game type, calling people out at tribal. People don't like that, obviously. So maybe that's what he was referring to.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a difficult spot because he is an underdog, like because he has to win out. But he also doesn't really have the full underdog story going for him because he was in with the majority for so long.
Well, he's kind of like, and not in the same personality, but like he's kind of like Mike in Worlds Apart, where he's not a full underdog because he was basically in the majority alliance for the pre-merge, but then the rug got pulled out from under him at the merge, and he had to win out from there. So he's not a full underdog, but he has much more of the underdog story than everybody else left, in comparison, at least.
Yeah.
Like Taylor, I guess technically has an underdog story, but it's not nearly the same as Brett's.
This post-merge is so murky in terms of the dynamics just kept shifting and shifting and shifting. Yeah. Because on paper, he should be an underdog. I mean, he goes into the merge down 6-4, and he's like the biggest guy on the tribe with less numbers, but then he still like ends up in the majority there. So it's just very interesting.
No, the post merge has been very fluid, I would say, and obviously part of that is the pre-existing relationships between Brett and Chelsea and Amy and Taylor. But I really do, even from other people, I really think it didn't always work out, but I always feel like people were trying to play very fluidly between alliances, like people like Jay, Billy, Sarah, even, and even Chelsea, I would say. Everybody was trying to weigh out their options, I think, as best as they could. So it's very interesting. But like you said, it has made alliances kind of murky because it almost feels like it changes a little bit vote to vote. Well, now Chad was in the hot seat last time, Nathan. Didn't really have much of an argument. Billy's in the hot seat this time. And unfortunately for him, he doesn't even have Chad to vote because the only options are him or getting the mother and daughter to vote against each other at the end of the game. Does Billy have any argument here?
I honestly would have liked it better.
It's so bad.
I honestly would have liked it better in the final words if Billy like owned up to it more. Of just been like, yeah, no, my pitch made no sense at all. Because like after the tribal councils, I actually do think it might have been beneficial for them to turn on each other and showcase their games and how they're willing to play. But in actuality, there is no reason whatsoever to keep Billy in this scenario for them at all. The only case you can make is to Brett.
I feel like Billy knew that he basically had no shot at staying. Like he had like maybe a 2% chance of surviving this vote. So like he just threw out any argument he could just to hope it stuck. And I appreciate that. I'd rather players go out swinging than, and Chad did this as well, like go out swinging rather than just taking it and just giving up basically. And he didn't do that. I really appreciate that. But like, no matter what argument you could make, you're not going to get Amy and Taylor to flip here. So, like you said, his only argument was for Brett to cause a tie. That was it.
Yeah, Billy's like a state-assigned lawyer to like a clearly guilty man here. Just like, yeah, we found him with the knife and it was bloody and he fits the profile of all the witnesses, but it might not be him. You don't know.
Is there a good argument? Like, is there let's just, as two outsiders, is there a pitch Billy can make here or did make that is appealing to Brett?
Yes. I mean, I would say so. To me, is honestly, I guess Brett just like told Billy like, yeah, no way, I'm not voting to keep you no matter what, because he was very much pitching to Amy and Taylor more so during this tribal council.
Yeah.
But the pitch to Brett is pretty clear of, hey, go to the final three with me. Don't go with the mother and daughter.
Well, that's what Brett said that at the tribal. He said he told Billy before they got there that it's just he's gonna vote him out. He doesn't want to do it, but he's gonna vote him. That's why I think Billy made a comment at one point that Brett's mind is already made up. That's why his only real shot was, again, it wasn't a good one, but I'm saying, like, having that knowledge of Brett telling you that already, obviously Billy's gonna try to get something going with Amy and Taylor. But I'm with you. I think Billy had a good pitch to Brett here, of like, hey, like, and we've seen this in other seasons before. I feel like, where it's like you tell Brett, hey, you tell Brett whatever you want, basically. Like, hey, rather than you have to win the final three immunity, why don't you give yourself a 2 out of 3 chance? Because I will take you if I win. Obviously, he doesn't have to live. Obviously, Billy doesn't have to live up to that, but like, you can try and convince Brett, if nothing else,
And part of the benefit of, or an interesting thing with this whole final like 5, this whole finale, is that no one's really a glaring jury goat,
No.
or and in this final 4, there's not really someone who's just a total golden child who can beat anyone, at
Right.
least from their point of view. So to me, it just doesn't. I mean, is Billy significantly more dangerous to take to the end than Taylor? I mean, I don't know.
Right.
It doesn't seem that way to me. They both played good games.
Amy had a confessional about it as well, where she thought that they don't really have a read on who the jury would prefer over everyone else. He said the only guarantee is Chelsea will vote for Brett, but everybody else, who knows? So it's when you're playing, even though you never know for a fact what the jury is going to do, you always have it in your mind, like, oh, I think this person was really close, or these people were really close to this person, so I think they'll get their votes, type of thing. But it doesn't seem like they really feel that way. And it also is harder to determine because, like, the game is much quicker, for lack of better terms. So rather than spending days with these people, they spend hours, at most, with some of them. So it's much harder to grasp who really built that connection that, oh, I'm going to vote for you no matter what, because that's how much I like you. It's much harder to grasp on a shorter time frame.
They said the only guarantee was Chelsea voting for Brett, but part of me really wishes we could have seen Billy trying to convince Chelsea not to vote for Brett in the end. Just trust me, it'll make you all look better if Brett doesn't even need your vote to win this game.
Just trust me, throw your vote, Chelsea. That's funny. No, I again, it's a tough situation, definitely, for Billy, because I do think there is merit for Brett taking him again. Brett's pretty sure that Amy and Taylor will take each other if they win, and he has to win out. But let's say the final 3 is Brett, Taylor, and Billy. Does Taylor take Brett over Billy? Maybe not, but at least maybe he can get Billy to take him, if nothing else. It's like that unknown of, is Billy telling me the truth, which he probably isn't, but it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't, because he knows for a fact that Amy and Taylor won't won't take him, you know? And there's that mystery of, will Billy actually do it? He probably won't. And I think that's what ultimately led to Brett's decision of, I just don't think no matter what anybody says to me, they're not going to take me. I have to get myself there. And I think he just saw Billy as a bigger challenge competitor ultimately. I think he even said that because Billy, up to that point, is the only other person who'd won. So if you're going off of history, Billy is the most likely other person to win. So I think that's ultimately why Brett thought he couldn't take Billy further here. Just the fear of him. He thought Billy was more likely to beat him in the challenge, I think. I think that's ultimately why Brett made that decision.
I was gonna actually bring up that I mean this in a good way, and that even though this might sound like I'm making fun of him here, I think Billy might have some of your weird DNA in this way. Where I just get the sense Billy would be good at random challenges, like just weirdly specific set of circumstances. He'd just dominate certain challenges. We've kind of seen it in challenges beforehand, so I could kind of get that concern.
Yeah. He'd be like the person who's like really good at like the challenge where it's just a slingshot, like something very specific that most people don't do in the like ever. That'd be funny. But obviously Amy and Taylor, I mean, there's no benefit to voting each other out at this point. Their games are not completely linked together, just like a lot of their games are tied together. You've come this far. It'd be a great story to go to the end together. So I don't think it made sense and plus, it's kind of the mother-daughter thing. So you don't really want to vote out your family member if you don't have to. So that also played a part.
They are easily the second tightest duo in the whole game after Taylor and Chad.
I don't know. I feel like if they had just gone on the same page, Steve and Janet would have had it.
Yes.
I feel like
that undying bond beforehand.
The connection of Steve's wife.
Yeah.
So Brett is gonna not Brett. Brett is gonna decide to vote Billy. Everybody else votes Billy. So Billy's gonna go here. But Jason does, I think, do a really funny thing when he says, one more twist. This thing behind me, this snuffer, is actually an idol. And you have to fight for it. Oh, just kidding. I was like, oh, that is absolutely something Australian Survivor would do. Fight for the idol.
It reminds me of the whole Survivor South Africa one year. They did it to where you could just steal idols from people.
Yeah.
And the ultimate problem with that is eventually it's just going to get to whoever can push someone over and yank it from their hand the quickest. They effectively went the South African route here in that way.
And it kind of reminded me of when last season when we put that little toy dinosaur on Amos's table at the voting, and then Ronnie thought that maybe is an idol, and so I'm going to play this little dinosaur. It kind of gave me vibes of that.
So
Billy goes here
for Billy, because So
I was just going to ask Billy. I mean, I know Billy. Personally, I've met him before. Billy's a great guy. I loved watching Billy this season.
Oh, where do you know Billy from?
We played a game together.
Oh, okay.
And then we met at
we
met I didn't meet him at the game. We played an online game. I met him at like a meetup.
Oh, cool.
But he's a really, everything about him that comes through the camera is like how he's a person. He's super personable. He's just he's really good at like both the social and the strategic game. It's actually kind of scary. Like he's just really good at both of them. And sometimes when you talk to him, you don't know if this is like a purely personal conversation or there's some strategy underneath it. And I think we saw a little bit of that this season. But I really liked watching Billy this season.
Like a really good school guidance counselor. You feel comfortable around them, but at the back of your head, you're like, oh, are they trying to help me improve myself here?
Billy was also, I think, one of the people, when we talked about this early on, who I think was trying to really play a fluid game. Like we even saw in the pre-merge, him and Sarah were like, I mean, just because we could stick with original boss, right? Doesn't mean that's what we're gonna do, So I think he was always playing hard from the get-go. So I appreciate that. But we get our final three, Nathan, and they did this thing where it kind of reminded me of like what they do on the real show, where we got a confessional from each of the final three, kind of reflecting on their journey and what do they plan, or how big are the stakes for this next challenge. I don't really remember anything they said. I thought that was kind of a nice touch.
Yeah. Thankfully, they didn't go old school in that way and just have them talk for like 20 minutes about like this game. It just symbolizes so much about my life and the world, and it was very
Well, at least
succinct to the point here.
speaking of Australian Outback from earlier, at least it wasn't Keith Famey going all existential on us.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't giving back to the land by throwing tikis into the river, the whole thing.
What would they even do for that in this instance? Because they're not going to burn anything down. It'd be like throwing tikis into the cabins, maybe. Trying to imitate that.
It would be worth it for the shot alone.
Nathan, I've described both challenges so far. Would you like to describe the final three immunity?
Yes. I call it the beanbag sandwich final immunity.
Oh.
Because it's puzzle plus beanbags plus puzzle.
Yes.
So the first part of it is you have to, one at a time, transfer all these blocks, this whole tower, to the other side of the puzzle, which apparently all these people practiced with, because they're all doing like super well with this.
I've seen that on the show, and I think that's even like a children's toy as well. I've seen that in like Target and stuff in like the kids section. Like when I was with my nephew, we were picking out games and that was on there. But yeah, no, I've seen that on the real show as well, like that puzzle. And like, I think the trick is you can't have a bigger piece be on top of a smaller piece at any point. I think that's the trick. At least that's how it was on the show. I don't know if that's how it was here, but like, yeah, you have to move the pieces from one side to the other, basically.
So this is a children's toy? What children are playing with this? Like future international assassins here? When I was a child, I wasn't doing anything this intelligent. It was much more just like shoving crayons at my nose.
Well, it's kind of like the one where it's like the little toy ring and you have to move the rings kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I was getting at least. It's definitely not this, and it's definitely not this advanced.
So that's the first part. Then the second part, again, the Parker special of knock things off a table using beanbags.
Hey, that was my section in the one challenge we won as original Chickamauga in 6. That was my section, yeah. Remember?
Yeah, you beasted that. And then the final is the fire puzzle. Like wait, it's not a fire puzzle. It's like a tree puzzle, right?
No, it's a fire. It makes like a flame. It's the one that Cochran made at Final Four in Caramo, and it's like a flame.
Okay, and it was like a miniature version of it. I thought.
Yeah, it was smaller.
So yeah, it's a beanbag sandwich, and they all do. I bet that's what incredibly
it was called on the wiki. I bet if this was used on the real show, that's what it would be called on the Survivor wiki.
Yes. So they all do super well, but Taylor wins immunity.
And like she and Amy both finished before Brett at that. Taylor finishes first, and then Amy finishes a little after him. It takes Brett. Like I think both Amy and Taylor are both on the puzzle by the time Brett even gets to the beanbag portion.
I don't want to take anything away from Amy and Taylor's performance here, but Brett didn't have his cleats. So, I mean, an asterisk next to all this.
That might have been the deal breaker. Taylor wins immunity, and very good performance. It was her first one, and obviously could not have come at a better time. In theory, if we're going off of what they've been saying throughout this episode, Chad and Brett are the two biggest threats to win. Chad's gone, so in theory now it's Brett. Literally the last chance you have to take him out, and Taylor wins. Very, very impressive win. Everybody did, honestly. I mean, Brett talked about, I sucked at puzzles in his confessional afterwards. I was like, I feel like he finished before I would have, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I feel like he did. I mean, obviously we don't know how long it took. Like, I'm sure they edited parts out. We don't know the time frame on it, but I don't know. I still thought he did better than I think most people would.
Oh, I would still be there, and I would have injured myself 3 times along the way. Yeah. I think he's well above average, at least.
Which one do you think would have been harder, the beginning one or the flame puzzle?
Oh, definitely the beginning one for me, at least.
Yeah, because I feel like
I think it's one of those things where, like, if you practice it on your phone for an hour, you could get it done.
Yeah.
Which, in the hindsight, that's probably like that, and slide puzzles are really useful to kind of just memorize.
And I get those bigger, like either wooden or like 3D printed puzzles, or mainly just come down to like spatial awareness type of thing. But the first one is more like, I guess, kind of also spatial awareness, but it's also definitely a mental.
Yeah, it's kind of like a logic puzzle.
Yeah, definitely logic. That's a better word for it. Both puzzles are mental, but like it's definitely, I think, way more of a logic puzzle than the flame, where the flame is just visualizing it and spatial awareness, like we said. But no. Well,
Angelica actually does something here that I genuinely appreciate.
Okay.
Because me and my girlfriend right now, we have been going through Hell's Kitchen, which is a good show. But one thing Hell's Kitchen does not know how to do is just yada yada, get to the point sometimes. Taylor wins immunity, cut to Brett being voted out. Like there's not like a bunch of pretense to it or anything. It's just, yeah, you get the idea. He's gone.
No, I think there's literally one scene. We have a confessional with Brett. Like, we have a confessional with both Amy and Taylor. We see one combo with Amy and Taylor, one combo with Taylor and Brett, but that's it. All of this takes place within the span of, I want to say, no more than 3 minutes. So there's not a lot of drawing this out, thankfully.
Yeah, and it makes sense because, I mean, there's just not much strategy to have here.
No, I'm not even trying to be funny here. Let's just looking at this. Let's look at this like as objectively as possible, right? No humor aside. Is there anything Brett can say?
Honestly, my pitch would be it'd be funny. It'd be funny to just out of nowhere betray your mom at Final 3. That's the kind of thing that if that were pitched to me, I would consider it just because it would be funny.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I don't see the appeal, really.
You'd have to hope that you're someone like that Taylor would find that type of thing funny. I mean, I guess the only real... I mean, Brett has... I'll get to what Brett does pitch in a sec, but I guess the only real thing is you can hit on the... Look, you and Amy are not going to be able to differentiate your games. You know what I'm saying? Like if Amy's not there, and obviously this argument makes more sense if it's a Final 3, but like you say, look, you and Amy have a lot of the same moves, a lot of the same resume, quote unquote, but like if Amy's not here, you get all of those votes. And obviously she's your mom. She'll be upset for 5 seconds, but like she's going to vote for you. You know what I'm saying? She's not going to vote for me, this guy she met 2 days ago. You know, it's like she's good. And like in the eyes of the jury, all of your moves that you may split with or share with Amy are yours now if she's not there. That's the only real thing I can see Brett saying that would even kind of like make any kind of sense. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, the problem with that though is that even if, like, let's say that transfers, it could very easily just as much give the impression that Brett pulled the greatest mind F in the history of Angelica.
Yeah. It's like not to compare, but it would be comparable in the sense that it's so obvious that Wu needs to vote out Tony, but he does here, and it's like it's so obvious Taylor needs to vote out Brett, but if she didn't, it would just look bad on her part, at least in the eyes of the jury. And it's almost like regardless of anything she did in the other rounds, that's all the jury would be able to focus on, because it's not only is the most recent, it's the most pivotal moment of the game. No, I agree. Like I said, it is a long shot. I'm just saying, like, that'd be the only kind of logic I could see him pitching. Nothing Brett was going to say works here. The pitch Brett does go with is interesting. It kind of ties back to what you said earlier about that confessional Brett had, where he said, people are going to be mad at me. Like, look, people are just not going to vote for me either way. I made a lot of people mad, type of thing. I was aggressive. That's the pitch he does go with. And I guess that's just I guess that's just a disconnect between the players there and us. Because, like you said, I don't really think Brett was aggressive. Again, even the point I made earlier about him arguing with people at Tribal, I don't think that was necessarily aggressive. It was defensive, sure. Did he need to do it? Probably not. But I feel like there's much more like aggressive plays that can be made in this game. Like Brett, as far as I know, didn't go up to somebody and be like, "This is the vote. Otherwise, you're going home. Do it." That would be an aggressive play. And I don't think Brett did that ever.
That was Jay with Kurt earlier on.
That's more of a Jay move. Couldn't you just see Jay pulling that argument of, well, I think it'd be kind of funny if you voted out your mom.
Yeah, I can see it.
Could you see Jay?
And that would appeal to
Kurt.
only Kurt on this season. Like, only Kurt would be persuaded by that. Like, that it would be a funny ending to the season. Like,
I could see Jay like pitching that, but like as a joke, not seriously. I could see Kurt maybe actually doing that just for the sake of the joke.
Yeah.
But like the only person all season. But no, they're not even in their regular tribal council spot for this. I don't know if there was a tribal council, but it, like you said, it immediately cuts to Jason, has the vote in the box ready to go.
Brett, go.
Brett, you're out.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we've talked about him a lot this finale. Final thoughts on Brett this season.
He comes out of nowhere. Like, this man does not win any challenges, like, individually for the entire post-merge, but he just turns it on completely for the finale. Challenge Beast Brett over here. I loved it.
And like I said, like, if nothing else, like, and I'm not going to say the finale would have necessarily been boring, because I still do think there would have been some intrigue if the final four vote was Amy, Taylor, Billy, and Chad. But again, they might have still just voted out Chad if he didn't win immunity. But again, maybe there would have been some intrigue. But I mean, like you said, the most unexpected events to lead up to this final two happened for this finale. So I do appreciate it. And yeah, Brett was great. We joked early on that he was almost in control of both teams. We joked that he looks like the type of person who would dominate these challenges, and not that he ever gave a necessarily bad performance that I can think of. It's just, it was shocking that he didn't win those early ones, but right when he needed it most, he turns it on. And like you said, they weren't even necessarily physical challenges. That's not anything against the challenges that he won. It's just like we talked about. I don't even know how you classify Snake or squared. What was it? Squared down or squared up?
It was squared off.
Okay, I wasn't even close. It was either snake / squared off or tree maze. Like, those weren't the type of challenges I saw Brett winning. And I don't mean that as a negative. It was just, it made for really exciting TV. But no, Brett was really good. I appreciated that he was able to have like a complete reversal of his arc halfway through. He was on top. He was on the bottom. One challenge away from maybe winning the game. I don't know. I think the jury's out on that one. But I enjoyed Brett.
So, yeah, Brett was fantastic. Fun presence the whole season. Played really well.
If only he wore his cleats that one time, because clearly it gave him an advantage in these last few challenges.
Heartbreaking.
So we get to it. And I don't know if you want to talk about anything in Amy and Taylor's opening speeches. I did write down every jury question and what the answers were. I didn't necessarily get a lot of, or write down at least what Amy and Taylor's opening speeches were. So was there anything you wanted to point out from Amy and Taylor's opening speeches?
Nothing in particular. I actually wrote down all the questions too.
I wrote them down.
We do preparation here.
Yeah, we do.
Contrary to popular belief,
Yeah, as much as we talk about Survivor video games from over 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. We do prepare.
That was preparation for this podcast, for the record. I wanted to study all facets of Survivor.
That was 20 years in the making
Yes,
for this
yes.
one podcast. So if you want, we can go back and forth. I'll go and then you can go because I wrote them down in order. So
okay,
Billy,
let's rate the jury questions.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because not all jury questions are created equal.
No,
so
they're not.
Billy Probst goes first here. What's Billy's question?
Why'd you say Probst? I missed that.
He said he wanted them to describe their game in the social, strategic, and physical sense.
Yes.
And which one they thought they were the best at. That's a very Jeff Probst style question there.
Yeah. Again, I didn't write down the full reasoning, but I remember what they say. Taylor says strategic, and Amy says social. Taylor talked a little bit about her strategic game and her positioning, and Amy talked about how she was in good with a lot of people, and that's how she got there. How would you rate? Okay, you want to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 the jury questions?
Sure.
Okay. How would you rate?
Our ratings are fully scientific. It's not arbitrary or random in any way,
and not subjective at all.
I mean, I think it's a 5. I think it's a pretty standard jury question.
Yeah,
it's not bad. It's fine.
No, I mean, it's not bad. It gets right to the meat of the game. Billy talked about that's how he views the game. And yeah, it's a really solid philosophy. I think most people would agree. Those are the 3 main components. It doesn't allow them necessarily to go super in depth, but it's also not like a question that doesn't allow them to explain anything about their game. So I think it's a 5 or 6. Chelsea is going to ask, well, first Chelsea's going to say no hard feelings, which is good. I also thought that was interesting. You always try to get at least for me, I always try to get a glimpse of the vibe of the jury as well. Not really a lot of sour grapes here. I don't think there was any at all.
That was interesting to me. Because you would think in the shorter format that this would be the norm, that people wouldn't be hyper bitter and like super weird about things.
Yeah.
But in order to think that, you would have had to never experience any of these games before, because people are weird. Like, people get so bitter. And especially people who sign up for live games, a lot of the time they get really bitter.
Yeah. And they feel really betrayed, even if they knew these people for a few hours.
I think this is the least bitter jury I've ever seen. Like, none of these people seem mad at all.
No. None of them do. None of them, nobody, like, raises their voice. Nobody's, like, aggressive in their questions. Nobody takes the opportunity to, like, nobody even, like, takes the opportunity to, like, dunk. Like, have a question that's meant to dunk on Amy or Taylor. Like there's questions where, like, they obviously are like, I have this concern about your game, or I have this confusion about your game, but nobody's like, oh, you don't have a shot at all. Nobody does that at all. Everybody's really nice and everybody's very calm about everything. So you're right. This is one of, if not the least bitter jury I think I've ever seen.
I've had school presentations with more bitter, like, panelists in front of me than this.
I've had team meetings at work way more bitter than this.
Well, I'm fascinated by that. That's a whole other podcast.
Because people were upset. It was the type of team meetings where it's like, we're supposed to discuss the schedule and also, like, complaints filed, in secrecy. And there was a lot of bitterness there. That's all I'll say. But Chelsea's going to ask each person what was their biggest move. Taylor says it was voting out Chad. Amy says voting out Billy. And this is one of the few I wanted to ask you about. Like, before we rate the question about their answer, like, I guess that are those probably their biggest moves. I guess in theory, I was trying to think back. I guess probably.
Well, I think they're the area where they were going to have the most trouble is getting to the final 2 together, because they were so well positioned throughout, like, the early to mid merge, that those final 5 and final 4 rounds were so crucial. So honestly, it probably was, because I mean, like, if I can't even remember. But like, let's say it's Jay versus Kurt going the first round after the merge. It doesn't really affect them that much. Like, they're not going to lose the game based off of that vote.
Yeah. And I agree with that. I wasn't knocking their answers. I was just trying to think out loud if there was even a choice that would have either been as good or better. But I think they both probably hit on the head there. How would you rank Chelsea's question? Again, very standard Survivor question, especially one we see in modern seasons.
Honestly, I thought the question Amy thought was being asked was more interesting than Chelsea's actual question.
What did she think?
Amy thought the question was, what was the most difficult vote you had to make? Which that's a little more interesting. But as is, I mean, I'd give this a 5. I think it's very textbook juror question.
I think even Taylor answers it, but like even Taylor talks about Chad was by far the most difficult vote for me. I think both of them, I don't think they misunderstood or anything. It's just funny that they took that route of the question when Chelsea wasn't even hinting at that. Yeah, I would say 5 as well.
Taylor is revealing, I convinced Chad to play his idol at 6, knowing he was safe, so we could vote him out at 5. Whoa. Now, that is a smart move, but Taylor, yes. I will let you know, we are brokenhearted about this undying alliance here. Do you want to make us cry? I mean, this was the through line. This was the most powerful bond throughout this game. And now we're learning there was some deception along the way. I won't believe it.
That is honestly, I'm glad you brought that up, Taylor. Bravo. That is a really smart move as well. And that ties into what you said earlier, Taylor, about how Amy also was trying to make sure Chad didn't win that Final 5 challenge. You know, you took out his idol at 6 and his chance at winning at 5. So bravo. Okay, so, sorry. I actually this is an interesting question because Steve asked a question for both. And what did Steve ask for both?
This is my hot take of the whole podcast. I think Steve gave the best jury questions this whole Final Tribal Council.
I agree.
I think these are both great questions.
I agree.
Yeah. First question is for Amy, and this is a through line that Sarah talks about. That she says they both say that Amy changed throughout the game, and that she was a lot more social in the pre-merge portion of the game. And Steve asked what changed, and then he asked Taylor what was the biggest lesson that helped her in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, yes.
Which I think those are both great questions.
Those are good questions. And he also, he's like, what is the lesson? Or I also wrote down where he was talking about, he's asking Taylor, what is like your most outstanding quality that you've learned, less about yourself that helped you. And I'm like, and I got to be honest, no humor. I'm with you. I think this might have been the best because I don't hear that either of those questions very often, at least me.
Yeah.
Like, nothing against the other questions the jurors had. They were honestly, I don't think there was necessarily a bad question in the bunch. It just, I didn't expect either of those questions. And you think in your mind, what are the standard jury questions that could be asked? But I wasn't expecting either of those.
I'm not exactly sure what Steve wanted to, not that you need to have like a angle that you're looking for it, but I'm not sure what I'm not sure if he had an answer in mind for Taylor for the second question, or if he was.
Yeah, I kind of got the vibe, and this plays a factor in ultimately. Not like Taylor to get bad. I'm just saying this kind of makes sense given who Steve votes for to win. I feel like he was basically coming from a place where I played a lot of this game with Amy, and I just didn't get to play much with Taylor. I think that's where he's coming from. So I think he was trying to give her a chance, to earn his vote. So he's like, this is something I want to know about you because I don't know you all that well. So I want to give you a shot to earn my vote here. I think that's what he was getting at. But I don't know if he had a specific answer in mind for her. I think he was just really curious how she would answer it.
Yeah.
And I also thought, and what did you think? How did you think? Because this is one of the more critical is not the right word, but this is one of the more quite blunt questions, I would say, that was asked. The one that was asked towards Amy. How do you think she navigated this one?
I mean, I think she articulated it pretty honestly. I would honestly say that both of these finalists were pretty straightforward with their answers here.
Yeah.
Not a lot of BSing going on here, which in general is good.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of like. There wasn't really the Chris Doherty make
yeah,
everybody
yeah.
fluffing, making everybody feel good, BSing, smiling from ear to ear. There wasn't that, but there didn't seem to be a lot of I'm gonna try to convince the jury things happened that I know for a fact didn't happen. It's gonna make me sound good. I think they were just completely straight up with everything that they thought.
I
Brett
think part
is
of this
Go ahead.
phenomenon that we're talking about with like not a very bitter jury and like them being pretty honest with their games is that this is a great final two gameplay wise. I
Yeah,
mean, they both just dominated this season, and not even like in a mean spirited way where you feel like gross that they made it as far as they did. It's just
right.
yeah, they both played a great game. They would both be great winners. Not much to be
Yeah.
all that angry about here.
And I was right. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to get into that after they got to the end. But no, you're absolutely right. This was a really good final two. Like you said, it's just the story of it is so like it just seems on paper so unlikely they could do this, and they still did it. And also, both of their individual games were just top notch. Honestly, like this is just both of them are already good on their own. Now you put them together as a dynamic duo, and it's like this is just unstoppable. Um, and so Brett doesn't really have a question. Neither does Sarah, but Brett goes first, and he wants the jury to know that although Taylor was more of a quiet player, she was very much involved in the strategy, and she was making a lot of decisions, not only with Brett but also for her own individual game. So Brett is trying to prop up Taylor here, but he doesn't put down Amy while he does it, which I can appreciate that. But he's definitely pro Taylor.
This is a good balance of stumping for someone while not being obnoxious about it.
Yeah.
Something that a lot of CBS contestants could learn a
Oh,
lot from.
he didn't pull the half Murphy,
No, he didn't pull half Murphy or Spencer,
which is
just
something that only I feel like us two even will get that reference.
but yeah, like you could still talk up someone's game and say, yeah, she did a lot behind the scenes without just being a total jerk about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's one of those things where it's like just because she was quiet doesn't mean like things weren't happening, and that's a good pitch because I think a lot of times quieter players that is one of their problems when they're facing juries. Not that Amy was this just super vocal player, just uh, Taylor was I can get the sense Taylor was a quieter personality and player, but Brett's telling them like don't let that make you think she wasn't playing the game. So
I
I
actually
appreciate
think
that.
that they played more under the radar than some, and I think their blunt approach to this final tribal council actually helped them, because I think that's an underreported thing. Of a lot of people play under the radar, they play under the radar, and then they get to final tribal council, and they're like really trying to finesse all their answers and make it seem like bigger and better than it was, which is
Yeah,
understandable, but because of that, people just feel like it's disingenuous, where it
yeah.
didn't really come across like that here.
No, absolutely. And I think what helped was this was a good balance of they weren't like so under the radar where they were basically relying on final tribal to explain all of their game like some finalists do. Like some people who do the under the radar strategy either almost have to explain their game at tribal or they intentionally wait until final tribal to reveal everything, which good or bad strategy is situational, but this wasn't the case. I think a lot of the jury knew what Amy and Taylor's game was like. They just wanted more specific, or they just asked very like specific questions just to add more details. So, like you said, it was the combo of I think a lot of the jury already knew their games, but also just the honesty and the bluntness in their answers that they weren't trying to finesse anybody.
Could be
Um,
totally off base with this, but I just get the
yeah,
sense that this cast likes each other. Like, I feel like if you brought this whole cast to a barbecue tomorrow, I feel like they would be pretty chill.
yeah,
Whereas
I
you
really,
cannot say
yeah.
that about most live game casts.
Oh no, no, no. I feel like this is just a group that gets along. Like I'm not gonna like I don't think they're all best friends or whatever, but like I don't think any there was really people got like people had a lot of bad feelings towards anybody. Like this, I think that's why this jury was so calm and like happy for that two of them, for lack of a better term, and not bitter, because I think they just all like each other generally.
Yeah. And we'll get to it later, but when all the jurors are voting, it seems like they're glad that they're voting for this person. Like they're voting for them, not against them, or voting like hesitantly, like the lesser of two evils here.
Which is what a lot of live games happen to be.
yeah, most, if anything.
Yeah, where it's like you said, voting for the lesser two evils, or like you don't feel good about this person, but it's like you're voting against somebody who you just absolutely do not want to win. I genuinely agree with you. I feel like everybody was happy to vote for the person they voted for, which is always nice. Sarah went next, and she kind of just adds on to what Brett says. She talks about how Taylor, even though she and her only spent a few hours together, she made a point to talk to her and get to know her a little bit, whereas she felt, but then she did kind of throw it back at Amy, not in a mean way, but she said, Amy, kind of what you said about Steve also, she was kind of agreeing with Steve in that Amy kind of changed throughout the different halves of the game. And whereas Taylor, she thought for the little she knew her, she was very impressed by. Again, not a good way of stumping, I would say. Didn't completely drag Amy down, but did prop up Taylor in a nice way.
And
didn't call out the jury
by Chad's question next.
Well, I was just gonna say, like you said, it wasn't like the Spencer or David Murphy where you're telling the jury they are just idiots and there's only one right answer, and if you can't see that, you're an embarrassment to the game. None of that was going on.
Yeah.
You said you didn't have Chad's. I did write down Chad's.
No, I have Chad's. I was a little confused by Chad's though. The basic gist I got was that Amy he said that Amy told him that she was there to help Taylor win, essentially. Is that what he was getting at?
No, right. No, that's kind of right, but basically what he asked was, he said there was a conversation at like final 5 or 6 where he said that Amy told him that if her and Taylor were in the final 3 challenge together and Amy thought Taylor had a good chance at winning, she would throw it to her. Right. That's what he was asking. He said that Amy made that comment to him, and he was asking, he was just essentially asking if, because as they saw, Taylor did win final immunity. He basically asked her, did you throw the final 3 immunity to Taylor? And I would say, again, I think both finalists do a good job. But if I was looking at this objectively, I would say this is probably the weakest answer out of all of them. Because Amy doesn't ever actually answer the question. She just says she does not remember that conversation taking place.
She had a good sense of humor with it too.
She did. She's like,
this is like you and I's conversations half the time, where you remember me saying stuff that I just have no recollection of at all. Right. Oh, that sounds like something I might say. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, I just do not remember making that comment. Everybody was nice about it. I think even a couple of people are like, there's so many conversations going on in a few hours. Yeah, it's totally understandable, Amy. But I just thought, objectively, I thought, might have probably been the weakest answer. I don't think that did Amy any favors here. I'm not saying that was the determining factor with how the vote went. I'm just saying, I thought, at the very least, even if you don't recall it, maybe you just do it. You do give Chad an answer at least.
Oh
wait.
Yeah,
okay,
I was a little confused by that, because at first I thought that he would. The way it was worded, I thought Chad was getting at that Amy was going to throw the immunity to see who would take her versus like Taylor versus someone. I was just very confused by this whole thing, so I'm glad you could clear that up.
Well, again, and there was probably more to it, but again, he just says basically that was a comment Amy had made to him at some point, and given that Taylor did win the final 3 immunity, I think he was just trying to see. And again, I think this is another one where you're not stumped. He was clearly pro Taylor, Chad was, but again, he's trying to stump for Taylor, but he's not dragging Amy, but he is asking her a question. And you know what? I forgot the most important part of this. We didn't rate the last few questions. We must do that.
Well, Sarah didn't really have a question. Um,
Well, I'm saying, what did you rate? What would you rate Steve's?
are we rating both of his questions or
Let's
just
rate
them
both of his
combined?
questions because they're
Okay,
different.
what changed with Amy? That whole thing. I think that's like a solid 7.
I give that a 7,
Um,
but with Taylor,
what was the biggest? I'd give that another 7 probably.
I
I
give
think
that
they're
an
both
8,
very good.
honestly.
Oh wow.
Well, just in the sense that, again, this is because, again, it's so easy for in these games, if you're on the jury and you barely got to play with one of the finalists, it's so easy to be like, I don't really know your game, so like I only have a comment, or like I'm just gonna skip you altogether type of thing. Whereas I feel like Steve was genuinely trying to give Taylor a chance to earn his vote, and I just appreciate that. I feel like I see that a lot in live games.
What to you would be like a 10 out of 10 jury question?
That's a good question.
The one I wish people would ask, and I was never on a jury, so I never got to ask this, but this would be my question. If you lose, will you be okay with it? Do you want this more than the other person?
Yeah.
Because I think that's a genuine question. I
Yeah.
think the jury a lot of the time wants to award the person who wants it more.
That is a good question. Again, we have to measure it, whereas because a lot of questions are based on what happened in the context of the game. So for this, we'd have to pick a question that is general. You can ask anybody. I think that's a really good one, and we don't hear it too often. I think that would be a 10 out of 10. But like you said, Brett and Sarah didn't really have a question, so we won't rate those. Chad's is the one that is like, Chad's is the only jury question I'd say that was specific to something that happened in this game. So so those are different. The rest you can ask to any jury, which is not good or bad. It's a little bit. How would you rank Chad's?
I mean, I like a 5 probably. I'm giving out a lot of 5s. I think it's fine.
I give it like a. It depends on what he was going for. You know, I can't tell if he was trying, without like being rude, I can't tell if this is the type of question that's trying to make like Amy look worse in comparison. You know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't tell if this was a nice way of trying to make Amy's game look worse in comparison. Again, I don't think Chad was trying to be rude or anything. I'm just saying I don't know if his intention was to try and lower Amy's like game in front of the jury, or if he was just genuinely confused about that and he never understood that comment, which that very well could have been what it was. That was just something that was puzzling to him and he wanted to ask.
We have one more. It's from Jay. He said, was there a specific moment where you felt like it was possible you could win? I love this question. I think it's just an interesting idea because, I mean, I think they even said it that both of them went in not thinking it was likely that they would win.
Yeah. Which I think is a good, humble answer. And I do believe they believe it. I'm saying, even if you don't believe it, that's just good in front of a jury. It's a humble thing to say. And also, I think that's honestly really realistic. I truly think even the most confident people think, oh, I could win, but will I? Probably not. So I think it's just a realistic answer for both of them.
Yeah.
Taylor's answer was, she said when Steve left, because in her mind, she just never knew where his head was at. So when he left, that made things a lot clearer, at least for her. And Amy says after she got into the alliance with Jay and Chelsea.
Yeah, both legitimate answers. As far as the question goes, I'd give that a 6.
I'd say a 6 as well. So, as far as I understand, I don't think they cut anything out. There's no closing speeches or arguments, correct?
I don't believe so.
So we go into the votes, and we do see a few people who they vote for, and we hear a little bit of the reasoning why. We see Sarah votes for Taylor, Chad votes for Taylor, Jay votes for Amy, Steve votes for Amy, and Brett votes for Taylor. Those are the only 5 we see. We don't see who Billy or Chelsea voted for.
The only vote that honestly surprised me that much was I would have thought Sarah would have voted for Amy.
Because she spent more time with her?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically why Jay voted for Amy.
Yeah,
I'm not saying there's not a legitimate reason, but I
yeah,
mean, that had to play a part in it.
right. So like we said, and because I want to ask about another question, but we get to it. Jason. Well, there was a funny moment where Jay wrote Mike the camera guy for his vote to
Yes.
win, and then he said, "You've been voted out," and he marks it off and says Taylor. See, this is again just what we were talking about earlier. This just doesn't seem like a bitter group of people. Like I feel like this group, the cast and the production team, just gets along, and this is a group that has a fun time and can joke around with each other to make a joke like that. You know what I mean?
Do you think Mike the camera guy performed well in the final tribal council?
Well, it's funny because there was two guys in the background of where the jury was sitting, and I hope one of them was Mike the camera guy, but he probably wasn't. He was behind the camera.
Yeah.
But
So
I mean,
he works more behind the scenes, is what you're getting at here.
yeah. And as far as his cameraman performance went, very good. I thought the shots were very stylistic. I thought I was watching an art house film. No.
Imagine like the final tribal council with cinematography. So like, Mike, what was your biggest move with shot composition this season?
Okay, if let's just say for completely random, CBS gets a completely different person to film the final tribal council. What director would you want to see film a Survivor final tribal council?
Michael Bay. A million different angles, like an edit every other second.
I'd want to see the guy who directed the first Thor movie. Everything is a Dutch angle. Everybody's like this the whole time. So
basically be like Edge of Extinction, like shots where it's like right up in their face or at like a weird angle or something.
So Jason reads the votes. By a vote of 5-2, Taylor has won Survivor Angelica 2021. And honestly, let's give Amy her props. Amy played a great game.
Yes, fantastic game. Controlled a lot of what was going on the entire way through.
She was aligned with several different people. She controlled so many votes. It was kind of ridiculous. Great game. Nothing to be ashamed of. It's also, I feel like if you're going to lose to somebody, losing to your daughters is fine.
Yeah.
And Taylor, of course, I think we've understood Taylor's not really, I don't think Taylor's ever seen the show. If she has, no more than a few episodes. And this is her first game ever. So, and I love when people who've never done this or even fans of the show come out and not only do well, but they win. I just think that's a very compelling story. So props to Taylor. And not only was she great at the game and a really fun presence on the show, she was also just really active. Other contestants were, but she's been one of the most active when we do these podcasts. So Taylor, if you're still watching, I do want to say shout out to you. I appreciate you following along as much as you did.
Yeah, we really do appreciate the feedback in that way. So she basically pulled an Earl Cole here. Just just going in blind, just crush it. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Move on. I don't know if we'll see Taylor for the next All Stars or another season. I mean, from what I understand, Angelica, kind of like with Jay, they'll bring people back. Not necessarily the same cast each time, but they don't mind if people play more than one season. I don't know if they do All Stars, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll see Taylor again next season.
Who would be your number one pick for next season? You get to pick to bring one person back for next season.
Well, so here's the thing. If I'm going from a pure entertainment standpoint and not so much like I think this person either would be good on a second shot or would need some sort of redemption. If I'm going from a pure entertainment standpoint, you already know it's Kurt.
Yeah, in hindsight, that was kind of a dumb question.
No. That's what I'm saying. Let's phrase it two ways.
He's the Jonathan Penner of this franchise. Just put him on every season. Like it won't get old.
That's what I'm saying. From an entertainment standpoint, I think you'd agree Kurt would be a good choice. But like, if you're thinking like from either like I'd like them to get a second chance, or just maybe things will go right this time, who would you pick?
Oh, I feel so bad. What was it? Tori who got cut right
Oh,
before the merge?
Alyssa.
I'm sorry, Alyssa. Yeah, she would be fantastic.
No, Alyssa would be great. I actually think she left kind of earlier. I think Tara would be really good.
Yes, yes.
I was so bummed when she got voted off. I think she'd be a fun one. They had a lot of really good early boots, I thought. Like Nick was fun.
Yeah, I'm seriously sorry about the Alyssa thing. I'm really bad with names. It's nothing personal.
It's also
yeah,
like
Alyssa was
past
great.
midnight. It's also like past midnight for you. So
yeah.
No, I think you can make a lot of picks for who you could bring back. I thought Tara was great. Alyssa was great. I think and I think that vote was unfortunate because it's just one of those um, circumstances beyond her control. If that's just how one of the worst possible number figurations happened for her, and she managed to go out there. Whereas I think if she made the merge, she could have really dominated. I also think there's maybe a chance Chad might even win if Alyssa's there. They seem to have a bond. I think that might have even been a more beneficial for not only her game, obviously, but Chad's. And of course, because he does do Survivor in his meantime, do you think Jared deserves another shot?
I want to see Jared just dominate the next season, and you and I, we look like such morons because we're like, why are you all so threatened by Jared? And then he just turns into this utter Survivor mastermind. We eat our hats over here.
It's like, and then we have to admit, they knew what they were doing all along.
Yes.
The Plaza tribe for being intimidated. There was a lot of good people.
Jay was a lot of fun.
Jay was fun. Steve was fun.
Basically, everyone who made the merge was pretty fun. Now that I'm thinking it through.
I really don't have many complaints with this cast overall. Like, I don't know these people, but just from like a viewing standpoint, I really thought they had a really good group.
Yeah.
It's also just
Chelsea was great.
It's also just super difficult to get even men and women, and they did it. So all jokes aside, like props to them.
Yeah, I don't know what ancient deity they sacrificed a goat to in order to make that happen, but they managed. We appreciate them for it.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention earlier, not that it's not obvious, but Billy and Chelsea also voted for Taylor. Those are the votes we didn't get to see when they cast them. They kept us in suspense, but Billy, Sarah, Chad, Brett, and Chelsea voted for Taylor, and Jay and Steve voted for Amy. And I'd agree with you. The only one that caught me a little off guard was Sarah. Not that Sarah didn't have a reason to vote for Taylor. If I was a betting man and I thought, who is she leaning? I probably would have said Amy, so I would have gotten that one wrong.
So, any final thoughts on the season?
Well, it was a lot of fun. I understand that we weren't always the most efficient or professional, but I really did.
But we were the most handsome, so give us that. Or the most
handsome.
Yes.
I don't think you're saying we're not the most handsome LRG podcasters. We're not.
How dare you all?
No, but I had a lot of fun covering this season. Like I said, I know Survivor Angelica has been around for a long time, but I think they're starting to get into the LRG, the rest of the scene with the other LRG games. So I'm very happy they filmed this one for YouTube. Even though, like we learned from Jason very early on, they did used to do DVDs, which I'm still very intrigued by that.
I want the Blu-ray Angelica box set over here.
But no, I was just gonna say I really had a lot of fun covering this season. I really enjoyed what Survivor Angelica had to offer. I think there was a lot of charm to how they do, and when you say charm, that's kind of hard to define because it's not like you can manufacture that. It's just depends on the group of players you have, and especially the cast or the production you have, and the type of personalities and the challenges they do. This just seems like a really laid back production team and cast, honestly, as well. So it was just a lot of fun to follow along, and I really did enjoy getting the chance to cover this series and podcast. It was a new experience for me, and I'm really happy I got to be a part of it. What about you,
And
Nathan?
I actually don't think the coverage for us is necessarily done, because Parker and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
We want to have a bit of a reunion / retrospective with the host, Jason, and any contestants who want to join in potentially.
Yep.
So I don't know if those will be separate podcasts or what have you. A lot of it just depends on timing and things of that nature. But I can almost promise you we'll get something figured out in the near future of some kind of season retrospective. So if you're any contestant from this season and you are interested in that kind of thing, hit Parker and I up, and we'll patch you in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would. It's not done for us, like Nathan said. We would love to do like a retrospective or a reunion, whatever you want to call it. Just talking about, with Jason and any contestants, what did they like about the season? What are they looking to change next season, maybe, or how is it going to be different? Just going over maybe some of the best moments of the season, maybe questions Nathan and I have about the episodes that we
all
can
the
get
stuff we got
clarity on.
horrifically wrong along the way.
Yeah. Also tell us how wrong we were at not only understanding what was going on, but about our predictions. But we did predict the winner, so we at least, if none of our other predictions stuck, we did get that. But absolutely, we will be. If, like Nathan said, if you're a contestant, reach out to Nathan and I, and we will try to get something going. Obviously, it'll depend on scheduling, but this is something we'd really like to do, and we're gonna make sure it happens.
All right. Until next time, any final thoughts?
No, trying to think. I don't believe they're casting anymore, but just in case they are, head to Survivor Angelica's website to see if the applications are still open. If you watch this and want to take part in it, again, Nathan and I aren't there in person, but just from watching it, we can tell this is a really committed production team, and I think you're going to have a good time if you just take part in it. So again, I'm not sure if the apps are still open, but again, you never know if you don't try. So head to their website if you'd like to participate in it. But no, Nathan, do you have any other final thoughts?
Nothing at the moment.
All
We'll see
right.
you all soon.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.